Hello everyone, just got back from, yesterday from a 4-day visit to London. I decided this year that rather than go up and down for the day to attend the South London Warlord show, Salute, I would go up and stay up there in a hotel, and it worked out really well. I've had a really great little mini break, and got lots of material for future videos on my channel, but I just wanted to talk to you primarily about Salute in this video, show you what I purchased and give you some of my impressions of it. So every year Salute has a different kind of impression on me, and this year I had such a good little holiday that Salute kind of shrank into the background a little bit. So I'm not going to say, I can't say really that it was better or worse than last year. Last year I went up for the day and I really enjoyed it. This year was totally different, but it wasn't such a big thing for me this year because I was having such a good time with the rest of my stay, if you see what I mean. So one of the things that one of the negative things about it, which I've never experienced before, because I've never got there in time to really queue up, other than once when I was staying with my niece. But I had really exhausted myself on the Friday by wandering around London and walking for miles and miles. And on the Saturday I actually got to Excel at about 9 o'clock, and there was already a queue forming, and it didn't open until 10, and I found my legs were so weary that it was really uncomfortable just having to stand in a crowd, not moving for an hour. I found that really physically almost as uncomfortable sometimes as the actual walking around the event itself. Once I was in and walking around, I was fine again. But I don't know what the solution to that is. Obviously people are going to get there early, and obviously it's a big crowd and they have to queue somewhere. But I think in future, I can't remember who it was who said it, I think it was Nick at British Legion commented on the queue as well. Even though in future I am going to go up and do the same thing again, stay in a hotel, I don't think I will attempt to get there early. I'll get there as the queue's going in, and it was because that wait outside was really not a good start to the show. And the other thing that was a bit weird was that I didn't really spend as much money as I normally would do. Last year I didn't buy any figures. I've just got such a huge, massive unpainted figures that there's just no point in adding to it. And this year I probably would have bought some figures had it been easier for me to do so. I know that sounds crazy, but there are a number of things that I would have bought. One was I thought I might treat myself to a new Ancients army, and I was thinking of getting some Hittites, but the range that I had primarily in mind was Essex, and when I went to their stall, although all they take to their shows is their 15mm figures, they don't take their box sets of DBA armies. So because that was fairly low down on my list, I just thought, well, I'll send them mail order if I do, you know, if I do continue with my plans to get a Hittite army. So I didn't buy those. I've run out of British Crimean War figures to paint, so I needed to get some more of those. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get them at the show, or I thought I did, because Eureka come over from Australia, but they don't bring that particular range with them, and I knew that was the case, and that didn't worry me. And Fighting 15s, who they're available from in England, had announced last year that they weren't going to attend any more shows, so it didn't even occur to me to pre-order some and pick them up at the show. And lo and behold, when I was wandering around, they were there. He's started attending shows again, but under the sort of banner of Colonel Bill's. He's got a little section in Colonel Bill's stand. And had I known, I spoke to him and he said, oh yeah, he's going to attend about 6 shows a year now. Had I known, I would have been able to get them. So again, it was another group of figures that I didn't buy. And on the subject of the Hittites, it does sound, I was talking to the guys at Westwind, and they were saying that they may well, their next foray is going to be into the Dark Ages, but after that they were thinking about going back to the sort of biblical ancients, and they might well do Hittites. So in fact, rather than get them from Essex, I think I might hold out, as it's not an immediately sort of pressing ambition of mine. I think I'm going to hold out now and wait a year or two and see what Forged in Battle come out with. So no figures other than this freebie that you get, which is a really nice little vignette of 3 veteran soldiers, a French, a German and a British soldier. One of the things that I did want to get was I put in a pre-order with Warlord, because they had a code where you could pre-order some items and then pick them up at the show, and that went wrong, but in a good way, because they actually posted them out to me. They got in touch to say they'd done it accidentally, but it didn't worry me at all, because I wasn't charged postage and I didn't have to carry them back from the show. So these are my purchases from Warlord for Salute, but they actually arrived before I'd even left to go to the show. What I wanted to do was get a couple of these wagons, which I've had my eye on for a long time, for Rorke's Drift. They're sort of wagon, I think they call them wagon barricades. And I was a little bit concerned about whether they would fit in with my models, because I have, as you may know, I've got a lot of Redoubt figures which are quite large. But I've just gone out to compare. This is Warlord's wagon, and you can see it's actually a less kind of imposing model in terms of size than this one. The wheels on this one are slightly smaller, possibly, but the actual length of the wagon is longer. So I'm really pleased with these. As I say, I've had my eye on these for a long time, and they're going to look really good painted up, I think. I've got 2 of those. Just to show you, this is a Redoubt figure, and you can see that the mealie bags are virtually the same size, so it's going to match really well. And I haven't got that many figures based individually. I mean, this chap is, because he's a little kind of unique piece. He's not firing a weapon or fighting. He's carrying mealie bags to the barricades. But individual figures would fit in there quite nicely. I've got most of my figures based for black powder, so they certainly wouldn't fit. But you can see it, the size is just right. So really pleased with that. And the other thing I wanted to get was a water cart, because the water cart actually played quite a crucial part in the battle, in that it was left in the when the British retreated to the half of the compound that they'd built and abandoned the hospital end of the mission station. The water cart got left in at that side, so there was I think one of the VCs was won by a guy who in the evening jumped over the biscuit box kind of barricade that separated the two areas and retrieved the water cart. So I had my eye on this one because it's a metal model. War bases do one that's MDF, but I'm not particularly keen on MDF, so I thought this. And it doesn't really matter if it is slightly smaller than the scale that we'd use, because it's only meant to be a little sort of barrel, on wheels. So I don't think it'll matter too much and show too much if it is slightly too small. So that was my first purchase that, as I say, arrived even before I'd set off for the show. One of the things I had intended to do was to buy the new edition of Saga. So I got that, the rule book, and the Age of Vikings. They had the Age of Crusades, or whatever it's called, on sale for Salute, and I'm not interested in getting it now. I've actually rebased all my Crusade figures for another set of rules, Soldiers of God, so they're all based on multiple bases now, so I'm not going to be able to play Saga with them. And to be honest, for the time being, I haven't even got any intention of taking these rules out of their wrap. I can't see myself getting many games of Saga in the future, because I don't play at my local War Games Club anymore, and it's not suitable for solo play, and I don't really know anyone else who's in the neighbourhood who's into Saga nowadays. So I think I just got that for the sake of for the sake of completion, as it were, having it in my collection, because I am a big fan of Saga, but as I say, I don't think I'm going to get any games in. Another thing that I wanted to get was a couple of Forged in Battle buildings. So I got this Roman tower. Now the reason I've got this is that I've got a 15mm Roman army, and I'm painting up, as you may know, some Gauls at the moment. And what I've got in mind is to play the scenario at the back of the House Caesar rules, which I did play once at my War Games Club, and it was really good. And that requires a watchtower as part of the scenario. That's probably around that way, isn't it? So I thought this was quite a nice little model. Probably, I don't know. I think they did stand alone, these watchtowers. So it's probably all right as a standalone. It needs a little bit of, not much. There's a little sort of balcony you've got to put around it and so on. You know what? I see what I've done there. It goes like that, and then the balcony goes around there. So that's quite nice. And then the scenario as well involves various little dwellings and things. So I thought this was quite nice. It's how do I describe it? I think it's an Iron Age farm. And this is a little farm, all one piece of resin. Going to look really nice painted up, I think. So that will do for one inhabited area in this scenario. And this and the tower and the Saga walls were really the only things that I knew I was intending to get. And as I say, I was wandering around and really didn't see anything to kind of tempt me. I would have probably bought some of Iron Duke's Indian Mutiny figures, because I've been watching Eric at Games with Sarge. He's got some painting. He's painting some at the moment. But the Empress stand, it didn't really have it. They didn't make it easy. If you were a bit undecided like I was, they didn't make it easy. You had to know what you wanted to buy and have a list and just ask them for it. You couldn't really, although they had the Iron Duke figures on display, I just thought it was a little bit inconvenient. And as I was kind of what's the word? As I was sort of just looking for things to spend money on, really, without any great desire. I'd got everything I wanted. I didn't buy any in the end. But what I did get, I spotted this. This was a little opportune purchase. There's a company called I forgot their name. I forgot this in here. The Cultural Experience, and they do sort of guided military history tours. And next year, my financial situation should improve, and I was thinking of taking one of their holidays. And I've been receiving their catalogue and brochure each year for quite a while now, and I really like the look of some of the holidays, so I went up and had a chat with them. Not because I wanted to spend any money with them, but just because I was getting close now to the time where I might be able to travel with them. And they were selling off. They didn't have anything really for sale, but they did have on their desk a number of these leftovers from when they took a tour to the battlefield of Waterloo in 2015. And they were selling them off now for £5 each. And it's a really well turned out, well produced little book with a whole kind of pictorial history of Napoleon's rise and fall and the British involvement in the Napoleonic Wars. It's got orders of battle for the Waterloo campaign, a little bit on uniforms, but a really good French uniforms there. I thought it was a really good little reference book. And then lots of maps, more photographs on the build up to the battle, and towards the back it's actually got photographs of reenactments, and not just the normal kind of naff photographs that you sometimes see, but ones that actually do look, well, here we are, apart from the fact that you've got the lion mound in the background there, but then they look fantastic. Look at that square. Really good photographs. And then the final thing, there's a printed map there, but in the back you've got three sheets of maps, but double-sided, which I think are really worth having. I'd pay £5 just to have those three those three maps. So the Battle of Quatre Bras at 9 p.m. and at 3 p.m. on June 16th. You've got Waterloo itself, the situation at 11:15 in the morning, so before the first shots have been fired, and at 7:45 p.m. I think they're well worth it. So that was quite opportune that I'm going to pick those up. This map of the Battle of Ligny. What's this? This one is the whole campaign from the French border to Brussels. So I was quite pleased to get that, and I also checked out Tiny Terrain's War Games mats, because although I said some time ago that I've got all the mats I'm ever going to need, I did realise that I wanted to buy another one specifically for the Crimean War, but I didn't want to get it on Saturday. But I wanted to check out the various colours and things, and they were quite useful, quite helpful. So I've decided I'm going to go for arid green and get a really big mat that I can put terrain underneath, so I can make the hills with lumps and bumps underneath the mat that will fold over them. So I've got that in mind for the Crimean War. And then I thought I would show you as well. As I say, I spent loads of time wandering around various places in London and doing all this sort of usual touristy type things. And excuse me. One of the other things I did was I lack a lot of what I would describe as photo stock. For a lot of my videos, it's me talking, and I don't really have a great deal of visual material. So I had a little route planned out where I was going to go around various statues and things like that, taking pictures of statues of historic personalities, and that would be all useful material, hopefully, for future videos to come. But one place that I did visit on the Sunday, which I think is a kind of hidden treasure of London, is the National Army Museum, which is beside Chelsea Hospital. And I've only ever been there once before, and that was a long time ago. I think it was in the late 80s, even maybe possibly the mid 80s, and it's been refurbished about a year or two ago. It was closed for a while and refurbished, and I enjoyed it then, but now it is just a spectacular museum. People with military interests tend to migrate to the Imperial War Museum in Kennington in South London. But the Imperial War Museum was really only intended to display items from the First World War onwards. And the National Army Museum is much smaller, but it deals with the history of the professional British Army from its inception in the days of Charles II, so from the 1660s onwards. So if you're interested in anything 18th and 19th century to do with British military history, you're not going to find it at the Imperial War Museum. But there are treasures galore, I can tell you, in the National Army Museum. So anything to do with the American War of Independence, the 7 Years' War, the Jacobite Rebellion, the Napoleonic Wars, and all the things that I'm into, like the Crimean War, the Indian Mutiny, the Zulu Wars, all those kind of things, all the colonial wars in Afghanistan, the Boer Wars, it's all in the National Army Museum. Enough to kind of, you could spend hours in there. You really could, and find all these different little snippets, as well as having still having a lot of things from the First World War and the Second World War up to the present day. So it deals with modern conflicts as well, and it deals with them in a very kind of balanced way. There are a lot of displays that deal with difficult issues in terms of post-traumatic stress disorder, pacifism, the poppy, questions about the issues to do with the poppy appeal. So not at all one-sided. A very good, very well-balanced discussion all the way around of the horrors of war. I mean, for instance, the Indian Mutiny. It deals a lot with the why the conflict turned into such a kind of barbarous and savage fight. But so what I'm going to do is do another video just on the subject of the National Army Museum. But I thought I would show you some of the purchases I made there. They have a great many of the original paintings. You probably see illustrations in books of things like the Charge of the Light Brigade and so on. This is a Hogarth. This is often in books on 18th century military history, this particular print. But they have the originals there. They have the original, they didn't have a postcard of it, the Frith, the famous depiction of the Battle of Isandlwana. I took a still photo of that, so I might be able to put that up on the screen. So whereas in the past, for the last time I went there, they had a kind of gallery of paintings. Now they've got them interspersed with the artifacts and so on. Unfortunately, a lot of the photos I took, because all the artifacts behind glass panels and in cabinets and so on, there's a lot of reflection of background light and so on. So I didn't get particularly good photographs, but the actual artifacts themselves are just remarkable. I mean, for the Crimean War, they have things like, they actually have the note that Raglan dictated to Airy, that Noland then delivered to Lord Lucan, the final confused note, which Lucan then ordered Cardigan to charge the wrong guns, resulting in the charge of the Light Brigade. They've actually got the handwritten penciled note in Airy's handwriting that Nolan carried into the Valley of Death. Things like that. They've got Raglan's telescope, because he'd lost his arm at the Battle of Waterloo. They've got the telescope that he used on the stock, so he could use a telescope one-handed. They've got the bugle that sounded the charge of the Heavy Brigade at the Balaclava, not the one that sounded the charge of the Light Brigade. They've got uniforms worn by various participants in the actions at Balaclava and so on. Every single item there has got this aura and connection with important events in history. I won't go on about it too long, because I do want to do a little talk on it, little video on it separately. I've got a fridge magnet. I like to collect fridge magnets, so this is a depiction of the Battle of Waterloo. And finally, just quickly show you this. I got they're not particularly, these are busts of famous historical characters. So they had ones that had a military connection on on sale at the National Army Museum, and they're not overly impressive likenesses. I mean, I think the one of Churchill is particularly, I don't know, that's Churchill there. It does look, I don't think Nelson looked that kind of girlish, really. He looks a bit soft in that one. I think he had more sort of sharper features than that. But I got the Duke of Wellington, which is quite a nice little object for the mantelpiece. There he is, Duke of Wellington. So I picked that up, and it's got some nice little, I don't know what you call it, like a little montage of Napoleonic soldiers and a little inscription at the bottom there. So I was quite pleased with that. So anyway, yeah, really good time at Salute, but as I say, it kind of faded into the background really a little bit with my other activities in London, so I didn't even really spend very long there. But what I decided to do in terms of video of it was to concentrate more on the games. And I actually thought last year I was very disappointed with the standard of the games. This year they had picked up a little bit. There was still a lot of games that were interesting enough if you were into that particular period, but there were still far too many pretty ragged tiles and terrains and things like that, with the armies just laid out, lined up, you know, one side against the other, so nicely painted figures and that. But what I was looking for was really games that I could get some interesting video footage and photographs of, and put those into a montage. And there were probably about 7 or 8 that I thought were worthy of filming. But what I've decided to do, because I have been watching, there are plenty of other YouTube channels out there that have already put up sufficient material on it. So what I thought I would do was just take the one game that really stood out for me and try and turn it into a kind of well edited little depiction of this game, and add some sound effects and visual effects and so on. Try and turn it into a little short video in its own right. So other than what I might be showing you in this video with my voice over of some of the games that I thought were quite good, I'm not going to show those. I'm going to keep them maybe for future videos or something like that. But I will put up another video just on the subject of this one game that I thought was a mile ahead of the field, the rest of the field. And yeah, I didn't really meet too many people. And last year I was talking to people all day long, but this year I didn't spot him. He spotted me. Mike from MGH 1736. He recognised me, so I stopped and chatted to him for a short while, and that was good to catch up with him and discuss our mutual channels and so on. And other than that, the only person that I bumped into that I knew, I believe, was Andy Lyons from Mainstead Castings. I bumped into him a couple of times during the day. But by about, well, sort of same as Nick at British Legion mentioned, by about sort of 1 o'clock, I'd done everything I wanted to do. So I left about 1:30 in the end, and decided I was going to carry on with my adventures in London. I was wandering around taking a lot more photos and so on. So I got back into the tourist trail, and that's it. So that's my experience from Salute 2018. Thanks very much for watching, everyone.